Choosing a mode to play in Destiny 2 can be a pretty demanding task for any new player. And so in this video, I'm going to help you. We're going to go through 3 modes to avoid as a new player in Destiny 2. So let's get started. All that being said, if you want to see more Destiny 2 guides, sci-fi content, and much more, then be sure as always to like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get straight to the first point. This first mode should perhaps be the most obvious out of all of them, simply because raids and dungeons in Destiny 2 are unlike other dungeons or raids in other respective MMOs. And that's because with Destiny 2, there are a lot of variables to consider, many of which include puzzles, problem solving, and of course, team communication is always imperative with every raid that you do in any game, but I think it's more so imperative in Destiny 2 simply due to the fact that there are just so many different layers to consider. And so as a new player coming into Destiny 2, your assumption might be that, well, I've played other MMOs and therefore raids are something I understand, and perhaps at a fundamental level, yes, that may be the case. But then once you jump into Destiny 2, into an actual raid, you'll come to realize that these raids are unlike any other raid you've experienced in any other game. So if you're a new player and you want to try a raid, by all means, but please be fair warned that it is not going to be an easy feat. You'll need to have a good team, a team that is well-oiled, in that everyone needs to be on the same page when it comes to your duties, because in specific raids, there are going to be duties you have to fulfill, not just the duty of, let's say, a mage would be the person who can heal, or the tank would be the one tanking hits. No, it's very different in that your role can simply, it can switch on the fly. You can be an operator for one instance and then swap off and become a scanner. And let's say you're doing Deepstone Crypt, for example. That's just one raid. Other raids will provide and consist of many different aspects that are going to vastly change depending on what you're doing. So your playstyle has to change, your attitude has to change. A lot of things have to change on the fly when it comes to raids in Destiny 2. So be mindful of that and try to avoid it, because again, as a new player, you may not understand all of the different nuances in the game. Plus your loadout really matters the most too. And if you're new, you probably don't have the best loadout in the beginning. So bear that in mind. That being said, let's move on. In my last video, I discussed about how Crucible was a great way for new players to experience PvP in a fun way. However, there is one mode within the playlist that I would recommend to avoid for the time being until you learn the game, and that is Trials of Osiris. Now, this mode is unlike your typical 3v3 competitive that you'd find in Crucible. Trials of Osiris takes that to a whole different level, and your team composition needs to be on point. Your understanding of Destiny 2 as far as weapon loadouts, as far as your armor, as far as all the different intricate details need to be at its highest level. And that's because Trials of Osiris really tests you. It's really a test of your skill, a test of your patience, your endurance. And so when you are in that particular mode, it can be really overwhelming for a new player, since you don't really have a great grasp of the whole loadout, the fundamentals, and your level is probably not where it needs to be, simply because Trials of Osiris, you want to be close to around maybe 1800 plus. So you can play Crucible, because one of the ways to access, or if anything, the only way to access Trials, is by doing the Trials Access quest, which means you have to defeat enemies, and the more you defeat, then you unlock Trials itself. And that Trial Access in itself can be quite demanding, since you have to, I believe, eliminate close to like 50 or 100 opponents before you can get in. So there is a prerequisite to get into Trials, but once you are in there, again, it's a different ball game, and you really have to have a great degree of focus, a great degree of knowledge, and understanding of how Destiny 2's Crucible and loadouts work. So if that's something that interests you, then again, just fair warning as always, you don't have to take my word. You can go and experience it yourself, but I'm just giving you a heads up. I feel like this would be a mode to avoid for now. That is until you learn how to play Destiny 2 at a higher level and you have better weapons, because if you don't and you jump into trials and you're not prepared, well, don't say I didn't warn you. That being said, let's move on. While arenas might look enticing to run into at first glance, one of the things to consider is that arenas consist of both a raid and a strike. It's a crossbreed between both modes. And so on the one hand, as a new light, the game does teach you what a strike is through your new light quest line. But of course, it doesn't teach you what a raid would be or how to experience a raid, because it's not something you would want to experience as a new player jumping in, as we've already mentioned earlier in the previous points. So arenas I would recommend to avoid for the time being, at least in your earlier phases, because it really does come down to, once again, team chemistry, coordinated assaults, and just having a much wider array of loadouts, because you're going to encounter different phases within the arena, and these different phases are going to have to test you and test your knowledge. And not just knowledge on, let's say, weapons, but knowledge on enemies. What type of enemies will you encounter? And do you have the necessary weapons to take care of those things? Because as a new player, you're probably not going to have everything that you want off the jump. You're not going to have, a wide array of exotics or a wide array of legendaries. So I'd recommend to play through the game in other modes that I've already recommended and level up. Because as you level up, then you'll start to develop a better grasp and understanding of what your responsibilities are, but more so, you'll have more fun. You'll have a lot more fun, and you'll engage with the game at a different pace than if you were to jump in and get lost in the sauce, because there are going to be some elements in arenas that, again, that share similarities to a raid. Puzzles and different areas where problem solving is really important and critical, and you really have to coordinate your attacks on certain enemies and bosses. So all that being said, just be mindful. It's a fair warning. Again, if you want to jump in and try it, go ahead. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. It's just that if you want to have the most fun out of arenas, I would highly recommend leveling up your character to a good healthy point. Let's say close to around 1800 would be nice. And anything above that, of course, is a bonus. But if you can get to around 1800 in the game, then you're good and you're solid for an arena experience. So all that being said, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this content. And if you do, of course, as always, like, comment, and subscribe to see more Destiny 2 content. And new lights, new players, welcome. Hope you enjoy your stay here in the community. And as always, as I like to say, new warriors, stay strong, keep fighting, and may the force be with you all, always. Join Discord, join me on Kick as well for live streaming, and I'll see you folks next time. Take care. Peace.